welcome to every movie I've ever seen. Today, the movie that I'm going to be talking about is The Day After Tomorrow. Apparently, I'm on a Dennis Quaid kick here. This movie stars Dennis Quaid, Jake Gyllenhaal, and Emmy Rossum. It's odd now that I think about it, Jake Gyllenhaal being in this. Is he not as... Because he's a relatively big actor. I mean, he got a lot of recognition for Donnie Darko. And then, after he had Brokeback Mountain. And then more recently, he had Nightcrawler. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see his career. And like where he was in his career at the point of this movie, because this feels odd. I know with Emmy Rossum, I think it's very early in her career. This is probably a couple years before she was on Shameless. I've never seen Shameless, so I don't know exactly when Shameless started, but I feel like it's been on for a couple years now. So this was probably like right before, and I feel like Shameless was kind of her big break. And Dennis Quaid's been, famous for a while before this. This was kind of Dennis Quaid being in this movie was supposed to be, the movie's draw. Even though you don't hear much from Dennis Quaid these days. Is he like? Did he get like outed as being a bad person or something? I know there's been a lot of that going around these couple years of Hollywood. I don't usually follow it. So maybe there was some controversy surrounding him or something. But I really enjoy this movie. I like it a lot. I'm a little bit partial to end of the world movies. I know I tend to enjoy post-apocalyptic more than I like apocalyptic. I enjoy the after the world ends stuff more than the world ending stuff. But I also enjoy movies that are set in snowy, tundra, Arctic settings, movies like The Thing. And so there's a little bit of that with the whole new Ice Age stuff going on. Oh, and Ian Holm is in this too. That's another, I suppose, relatively big name. I'm pretty sure this was after Lord of the Rings, which isn't... He's not famous for Lord of the Rings, of course, but, Lord of the Rings is very popular and successful. That shoots everybody up on the map even more, even if, even people like Hugo Weaving and Cate Blanchett, who were already famous before Lord of the Rings, all this does is revitalize a little bit. I want to say this was 2005 or 2008. I'm leaning more 2008. I know it was before the movie 2012 came out, which I think 2012 maybe came out in 2010. Or maybe 2012 came out in 2008, and this came out in 2005. I know it was before 2012. I feel like 2012 gets maybe some of the recognition that this should get. This is a much better movie than 2012. Although, now that I'm thinking about it, War of the Worlds, that was definitely 2005. So, I don't know. I should have, done my research before this, but anyway. I think what's nice about this movie is, while it does fall into some of the the classic tropes of a disaster movie. I mean, there's 50 billion movies with a giant tsunami in them, flooding the streets. It it does other things that might not be, a super cliche trope you see all the time in disaster movies. Like, for example, there's no child character in this. And disaster movies, end of the world movies, usually have some child character who's, they have some affliction which will be a problem throughout the movie. They have asthma or whatever. And Uh, like other end of the world movies too. Dennis Quaid isn't like a crappy father who's divorced from his ex-wife, and his ex-wife has a new husband, a stepdad who's an asshole. I know. I guess I'm just thinking about similarities between War of the Worlds and 2012, which I like War of the Worlds a lot. I don't really care for 2012. But yeah, the movie's it's a pretty good movie, I think. I mean, I know it's a little objective. I like it personally. It might not. I'm not saying it's the greatest thing ever made, but I enjoy it. The the little scenario or bits or whatever is kind of cool. They had the big hail in Japan and the 3 tornadoes in California, which form like a super tornado, and then New York City floods, and then everything freezes over because there's like a hurricane, but it's like a cold hurricane, so everything in the eye of the hurricane will like freeze like instantly, which is a kind of cool effect, I guess, for the time. And so Jake Gyllenhaal and his friends, Emmy Rossum and his other friend, I think he's somebody, I can't think of him off the top of my head, and then they meet like a new guy who's kind of maybe a jerk. He's played by somebody who's in Walking Dead, I think. That's how I recognize him most, unless there's something else I recognize him from. But I know I'm like vaguely familiar with the guy. He's supposed to be like a jerk, but it's like turns out like, oh, he's not that much of a jerk. He's kind of a nice guy towards the end of it. Because you don't really have a whole lot of character deaths. I mean, obviously there's a lot of death in the movie with the disasters, but you don't have a whole lot of character deaths. I think the only couple character deaths I can think of would be Dennis Quaid's older friend, who goes on the journey to New York City with him, because it's Dennis Quaid, his younger friend, and then his older friend, and the older friend like dies in a pretty cool scene where they're walking and they realize that they're walking on top of a mall, so like they're walking over a glass skylight, which is a pretty cool scene. And he falls and cuts himself like cuts his rope like in Vertical Limit. And then the president dies, and so the vice president has to take over, and the vice president's kind of a jerk. That's a whole other thing. That's another thing too. The president dying. Doesn't the president die in 2012? I feel like that's like another forced scenario of conflict that they want to like leave, like, oh, the president died, now we got this vice president who's kind of an asshole, now he's in charge, is he going to do the right things, blah, blah, blah. Whatever. A lot of disaster movies can be somewhat similar. And there's a couple other characters there. There's like a homeless man, the dog. They wouldn't let him in the library, and now he's surviving in the library. He has some on-the-nose dialogue about people and their cars polluting the atmosphere. A lot of disaster movies are also global warming. I don't want to say propaganda pieces, but it's very sometimes very on the nose messages of don't kill Earth or else Earth will also kill you. But yeah, I enjoyed the movie. I don't care for like the 13 minutes opening credits of them panning across the Arctic. That could come and go as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, it's a good movie. I like it. I enjoy it, and that's all I've got to say about The Day After Tomorrow.